Hey there, and welcome back to Mama Drama and Trauma. I'm your host, Jenny Kimmel, and this is episode 4, Surviving the Anger, Hurt, and Silence of Betrayal, week 3. This was the week where everything started to change, not because anything around me had gotten better, but because I was starting to realize this was real. The fog of denial was still there, but it was thinning. The shock wasn't gone, but the sting of reality was settling in. This was the week that anger and hurt became my constant companions. This week, I'll also be sharing personal journal entries straight from those days to give you a glimpse into exactly how I was feeling as I tried to survive it all. The emotional landscape when the shock turns to anger. I was angry, so damn angry, and hurt in a way I didn't even know was possible. There weren't many texts between us that week, and that was intentional. I was starting to put a wall up around myself, not because I didn't still want him to choose me, but because I knew I couldn't keep falling apart every time he reached out. I didn't know what my life was anymore. The man I had loved for over 2 decades was gone. And worse, he didn't seem to care that he had destroyed me. We still talked, sure. We still texted, but it was transactional. Pickups, drop-offs, logistics, not a single word about the explosion he'd set off in our lives. But inside, I was screaming. I spent so much time in my own head that week, trying to make sense of it all, trying to understand how I didn't see this coming, how I'd been blind to the cracks forming in my marriage, how I could have been so devoted, so committed, and so clueless, how I had given so much of myself for so long and never noticed I had nothing left for me. There were so many conversations that happened in our garage. Moments where I stood there, broken, telling him I was a good wife. I didn't deserve this. And he agreed. But even with his agreement, the pain didn't ease. Because the truth is, I had given everything I had to him, to our kids, to our life together. I poured every ounce of myself into keeping things going, keeping them happy, keeping us whole. But in doing that, I lost sight of me. I didn't see that while I was showing up for everyone else, I wasn't showing up for myself. And I think, as painful as it is to admit, that's part of what cracked the foundation of our marriage. I gave and gave until there was nothing left. And I never stopped to notice that no one was pouring anything back into me. Journal reflections and life with the kids. August 26th, 2023, journal reflection. Why do I miss you so much? When I had you, I took you for granted. Now I see what I couldn't see then, but it's too late. I was at the point that everything I had ever wanted, I had it, and I let myself go. I lost everything. I miss my family. I miss my best friend. I never imagined this would end. It seems so easy for you, like 22 years meant nothing. That's what it felt like 22 years of memories, commitment, kids, birthdays, holidays, late night talks, vacations meant nothing to him. And I wasn't just grieving the betrayal. I was grieving the loss of everything. The loss of the life I had built, the version of me that only existed inside that marriage. Life with the kids trying to function. The boys had gone back to school that week, and thank God for that routine because I desperately needed something to hold on to, something predictable, something steady, getting up, making lunches, getting them out the door, shuffling them to and from school and practice, cooking and cleaning up dinner and running our business. It gave me a purpose, a reason to keep going. But between all of that, I cried. I cried in my room. I cried in the car. I cried in the kitchen. I'd sneak away to my room and just sob. Deep, body-racking sobs. The kind you feel in your chest. The kind you hope no one hears, but also kind of hope someone does hear. Because you're just so tired of doing this alone. And the boys saw it. They felt it. They were old enough to know, even if I tried to hide it, that everything had changed. They weren't little boys anymore. They understood more than I wished they did. And I know they were watching me, not knowing how to help, but wanting to. They'd check in on me. "Are you okay, Mom? Do you need anything?" Sometimes I'd say I was fine, but most of the time I just cried, and they'd quietly walk away. We were all trying to survive in our own ways. My husband would come pick them up for dinner here and there, maybe once or twice that week. There was no custody plan yet, no structure, just awkward handoffs and painful silences. They would ask questions here and there, little comments about things they overheard, like snippets of their dad on the phone with the woman he was seeing. And I didn't know how to respond. At first, I blamed her. It was easier. She was the villain I could see from a distance, easier to be angry at than the man I still loved. And my kids, they picked up on that. They knew I didn't like her. And at the time, they didn't either. We all blamed her because it's hard to blame the person you love. But the truth, she didn't have a commitment to me. He did. He was the one who broke the vow. He was the one who let us down. The deeper conversations with my boys would come later, but at this point, it was still just confusion and whispers. They were curious, wanted to know who she was, but I didn't even know, so I had no answers to give. When they weren't with me, when they were gone for even a couple hours, the house felt impossibly quiet, like it wasn't a home anymore, just a shell of what used to be. Speaking to her husband and communication with him. Speaking to her husband, a mirror of my own pain. During that third week, I did something I never expected. I reached out to her husband, the man who was also being betrayed, the man who, like me, was sitting in the wreckage of something he didn't ask for. I didn't know what to say exactly, but I just needed someone who would understand. I just remember feeling the need to connect, not out of anger, but out of shared devastation. I told him I was sorry. Sorry he and his child were being dragged into this too. Sorry that my husband was part of the pain his family was now feeling, because we were both living inside the same nightmare, just from opposite sides of the same betrayal. I just needed him to know I understood, and that even though I didn't create this situation, I hated that we were both trapped in it. At that point, we hadn't talked much, but that message opened a door. And in the months that followed, we would check in occasionally. Not constantly, just when we needed to hear from someone who got it. Because that was the thing. He was the only other person who really understood what I was going through. Not friends, not family, not even my therapist. He was in it, living it, hurting because of the same two people, grieving a future that had just vanished overnight. And while I'll never share his story because it's not mine to tell, it helped. Having someone who truly knew what I was feeling, someone who didn't need the whole backstory, who didn't need me to explain or soften or make it make sense, who could just pick up the phone and get it. And for a while, that mattered more than I can put into words. It was a strange kind of comfort, not healing, not closure, but a mirror. A reminder that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the only one standing in the ashes of something that used to be sacred. Communication with him, hope, hurt, and mixed signals. My husband and I still spoke, but I was keeping my distance, trying to protect myself. It wasn't easy, not by any stretch, because a part of me still wanted him to look at me and say, I made a mistake. A part of me still wanted him to choose me. I would see him when he came to get the boys, and still I wanted to see him. A part of me wanted him to look me in the eyes and see the pain he caused, to see how much I was hurting and maybe, just maybe, change his mind. And there were moments when he'd come to pick up the boys and I'd find myself standing in the garage with him. Me crying, him standing there silent, not yelling, not begging, just crying. Me telling him I didn't deserve this. I wanted him to see me, to see the pain he caused, to see the woman who gave him everything and was now left with nothing, hoping that the sight of my brokenness would bring him back. But it didn't, because you can't make someone love you. You can't cry someone back into commitment. I know that now. The messages from him, they were all over the place. Some apologetic, some cold, some confusing. 1 minute, he was distant. Then he'd say something that made me think maybe he wasn't sure, that maybe he regretted what he was doing. And every time he did that, I'd cling to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd come back. He apologized, but not in the way I needed. It felt like guilt. His apologies felt empty, like he was saying, sorry, just so he wouldn't feel as guilty, not because he truly understood what he had done. He was more concerned with how people saw him than what he actually did, and that made it worse. He didn't want to look like the bad guy, especially to other people. And maybe he wasn't a bad guy, but he made bad choices, and he changed all of our lives forever without giving us a say in it. August 27th to 28th, 2023, Journal Reflection. You abandoned our kids and me for a woman you've known 2 months. You've been married to me for 22 years. I never imagined that you could be so cruel. I hate that you can be okay walking away from your own family. That's what I wrote because that's what I felt. Every day felt like a betrayal all over again. Not just because he was with her, but because he seemed to pretend like everything was fine, like he hadn't just blown up our lives. And to make things more confusing, I went to counseling. I begged him to go too. He went once with me and maybe twice by himself, but he never truly leaned into it. I don't think he believed in counseling. Even when I'd brought it up years before, during our hardest moments, he'd brush it off. He didn't think it would help, but it helped me. Counseling saved me. It became a lifeline. And even though I went thinking I was trying to save our marriage, I ended up saving myself. Support, isolation, and first steps toward healing. This was the week I leaned hardest on the people who loved me. My mom, my sister-in-laws. Even his brothers, who were kind and supportive, helped with house stuff and just listened when I needed them to. I'd go out with my sister-in-laws for breakfast or lunch just to feel human again. And I'd cry right there at the table, mid-conversation, mid-bite, mid-nothing. The grief would rise up and spill out, and they never judged me for it. They just let me cry. I even talked to his mom several times, just trying to understand. In the beginning, everyone was confused. This was out of character for him, so we were all just trying to figure out what was happening, and I was still trying to protect the truth. By the 3rd week, I still hadn't told a single friend what was going on. Not one. Only my immediate family knew. my mom, and my sister because I simply couldn't bear to say the words. And even then, I wasn't giving them everything. If I said the words out loud, I'd have to believe them, and I wasn't ready for that yet. I think part of me was still in such disbelief that speaking the words would somehow make it more real. Because once you say, my husband is having an affair, there's no taking it back. There's no undoing that truth. There's just the silence that comes after, the pity, the questions, the weight of it all hitting the air around you. I knew he had told his family. I think his brothers knew early on. One of his brothers told their dad. I believe he told his mom directly. My sister-in-laws reached out to me, kind and compassionate, but it wasn't because I had told them. It was because he had, and they felt I deserved some sort of support. But me, I didn't pick up the phone to tell anyone. I didn't go on a group chat and drop the bomb. I stayed quiet. I didn't know if it was shame, denial, shock, or all of it wrapped up in one huge emotional knot. I didn't want to believe this was really happening. And if I said it out loud, if I spoke it into existence, I'd have to accept it. And I wasn't ready to accept it. Maybe I was embarrassed. Maybe I felt like I had failed somehow, like I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. I didn't see it. I didn't feel it coming. And that kind of blindside wrecks your sense of self. My cousin eventually found out what was going on through my mom and reached out. People were finding out, but it wasn't from me. It was like the walls of my life were collapsing, and I was still standing in the middle of the rubble, trying to pretend everything was okay, or at least not completely broken. Looking back now, I know I wasn't trying to hide it from others. I was trying to survive it myself. August 30th, 2023, journal reflection. I hate what you did to our family. Shame on you. It's like you don't even care. You're living in some fantasy land, like this relationship is going to be so much better. Yeah, that's where I was mentally. Angry, bitter, and honest. Meeting Dr. Kristi, my first step toward healing. I was going to counseling twice a week with Dr. Denise, Tuesdays and Fridays, because I needed that much support. I didn't even realize it then, but I was already beginning the work of healing. And that same week, I had my very first appointment with Dr. Kristi, a chiropractor, acupuncturist, and, in my opinion, a healer. I'll never forget the first time I walked into Dr. Kristi's office. It was just a few days after my cousin had called to check on me. My mom filled her in on what was going on in my life, and she could hear the ache in my voice, the exhaustion, the emptiness. And she said, "You have to go see Dr. Kristi. She's not just a chiropractor. She's different. She'll help you." At that point, I was so broken, I was willing to try anything. So I called and made the appointment. I had no idea how much that one step would begin to change me. When I got there, I was barely holding it together. Her office was an open setup, and I remember walking in and seeing she was still with another patient. So I sat down quietly on the couch and waited, trying so hard to keep it together. But I could feel it building, the emotion, the pressure in my chest, the way your throat tightens when you're trying not to cry in public. And the second that other patient left, the very second that door closed, I broke. I completely fell apart. I started crying, not polite tears, ugly crying. My whole body was shaking, and I remember looking at her, apologizing, embarrassed, humiliated, and she just looked at me with so much kindness. She didn't flinch. She didn't rush me. She said, "You're safe here. Let it out." And I did. She led me to the table, and I laid down face first with my head in the little opening, and I cried the entire time she worked on me. I wasn't even trying to talk at that point. I couldn't stop sobbing long enough to say anything. She just let me cry. She worked on me gently, intuitively, pressing on pressure points, releasing tension, helping me breathe again. She didn't just work on my body, she worked on my spirit. And somehow she knew what I needed, even when I didn't have the words. She told me I wasn't alone, that I was going to be okay, that she had been through her own pain. Not the same story, but close enough to understand. And I believed her. That day, in that office, on that table, crying with my face buried in a headrest, I started to feel the tiniest bit of relief. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't going to feel this way forever. She was the beginning of my healing, not because she had all the answers, but because she gave me permission to fall apart in a place where I didn't have to be strong. And when you're holding up an entire world that just collapsed, that kind of space is everything. Between her and Dr. Denise, I finally had women around me who weren't just telling me to be strong. They were giving me space to be weak, too. And I needed that. I was seeing Dr. Denise twice a week. She was helping me process so much, but it was my first visit to Dr. Kristi that really caught me off guard and cracked something open I didn't even know I'd been holding in. My mom, healing alone and closing reflections. My mom, my rock. My mom was absolutely there for me, like she has been my whole life. I truly don't know if I could have made it through those early weeks without her. She just showed up with quiet strength, open arms, and zero judgment. She didn't push me to talk or try to fix things. She didn't fill the silence with cliches or advice. She just let me be. She let me cry. She let me fall apart and listen to me say, I just want this pain to go away. I don't want to feel this anymore. She never once made me feel like I was too much. She just listened, held space, held me. And what I admired most was that even though she was shocked and disappointed in him, just like I was, she never said hateful things about him. She was hurt, but she still showed him kindness when she saw him at games or events for the boys. She never let her anger get in the way of being a good mom and a good example of grace, because that's who she is, full of grace, even when it's hard. She knew he was still their dad, and she wasn't going to make it harder on anyone, especially not the boys. She's always been that way, loving, patient, supportive. And looking back now, I see how lucky I am to have had that kind of mother during the worst season of my life. Her presence didn't take the pain away, but it reminded me that I wasn't alone in it. I don't know how I got so lucky to have a mom like that, but I did, and I will never take it for granted. Alone in the healing. I didn't think the pain would ever go away. I really didn't. It felt like this ache had moved into my chest and made a home there, like it was never going to leave, like I'd carry that weight with me forever. And maybe if you're listening to this right now and you're in that space, I want you to hear me when I say it does go away. Not overnight, not easily, but it does ease. It softens. And one day it no longer defines every breath you take. But at that time, I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to wake up every day with that heaviness in my chest, that knot in my stomach, that wave of sadness that would crash over me before I even got out of bed. I just wanted the hurt to stop. And still, I knew deep down the only way out of it was through it. There were no shortcuts, no numbing that would actually heal me. I had to feel it, all of it to get to the other side. I knew I had my people. I had my mom, my sister-in-laws. I had support, and I am so grateful for that. But the truth is, healing is a lonely process. It's something you have to do inside yourself. No one could crawl into my body and carry the grief for me. No one could undo the betrayal or hand me a step-by-step plan to put my life back together. I had people around me, but I still had to do the hardest work alone. There were nights when the boys were with my husband and the house was just silent. No background noise, no voices, just me and my girl Maisie, my grief and the echo of everything I had lost. It was lonely, but I needed it because in that silence, I started hearing myself again. And as hard as that was, those quiet, lonely nights became part of my healing because in the stillness, I started to find myself again. Surviving the moments, what got me through. Music became my medicine, my lifeline. It was like therapy for my soul. I made playlists, sad ones I could sob to, empowering ones I could blast when I needed to feel like I mattered again, songs that gave me permission to feel what I was feeling, and others that reminded me I wasn't broken, just hurting. I walked Maisie every day. Maisie, my dog, my shadow, stayed by my side when no one else could. I walked every day. I'd walk and breathe, just letting the air hit my skin. I'd walk and pray, letting the sun remind me I was still alive. And I cried everywhere, car, shower, grocery store, counseling office, you name it. I've cried there. I remember sitting at my mom's house sobbing and saying to her, I just want the pain to go away. I don't want to feel this anymore. But the truth is, you don't heal by skipping the pain. You have to walk through it. And that's what I was doing. Every single day, even when it didn't feel like progress, I was healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing. To the version of me in week 3. Jenny, I see you. You're hurting so deeply. You don't think this pain will ever end, but it will. You are already rising. You are already healing, even when you don't feel it yet. You are stronger than you've ever given yourself credit for. You've already been carrying the weight of this family for years. You just didn't see it until now. You're going to make it. You're doing the hardest thing. You're choosing to walk through it. You're going to rebuild. You're going to find yourself again. This isn't where your story ends. It's where you begin again. And if you are in the depths of week 3 now, I say to you, one day you're going to look back and say, this is where my story began again. Until next time, take care of you. You are strong, you are worthy, and your story matters.